I'm Sandra Mitchell, 62 years old, and my son didn't just forget my birthday. He ignored it completely. No call, no text, just silence that cut deeper than any words could. I sat alone at the Cheesecake Factory in Dallas, a table set for two, the waiter's pitiful smile burning through me as I blew out a single candle by myself. The couple at the next table whispered, and I felt their pity like needles in my skin. I told myself I was fine. I wasn't. 6 months later, when my $200,000 Porsche Taycan showed up on Instagram, my son Steven finally called. His voice was tight, rehearsed. "Mom, we need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow." So I said yes. And trust me, I didn't come empty-handed. Before I tell you what happened next, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. New York, California, Texas, Florida? Have you ever been ignored by your own child until they needed something from you? Because this story is about to get real. People like to say being a mother is the most rewarding job in the world. In my house, it felt like the most invisible one. I grew up believing that motherhood meant sacrifice, that love meant putting everyone else first, that being a good woman meant shrinking yourself down until you fit into whatever space was left over. And for 35 years, that's exactly what I did. Life in suburban Atlanta, Georgia looked perfect from the outside. Robert and I were high school sweethearts from a small town outside Macon. We got married young, 23 years old, standing in front of a tiny Baptist church with nothing but love and hope between us. Robert got a job as a sales manager at Home Depot. I worked as a dental hygienist, cleaning teeth, making small talk, smiling until my face hurt. We bought a modest ranch house in Roswell with a mortgage that scared us and a yard that needed constant work. It was the American dream, or at least that's what we told ourselves. Then Steven came along. Our miracle baby. I was 27, and the moment they placed him in my arms, I knew my life would never be the same. Robert cried. I cried. We stood in that hospital room in Atlanta, believing we'd created something perfect. And for a while, maybe we had. I gave up everything for that boy. I'd been accepted into nursing school at Georgia State, full acceptance letter, ready to start that fall. But babies are expensive, and someone had to stay home, and somehow that someone was always me. Robert said we'd figure it out later. Later never came. I traded scrubs for soccer uniforms, traded textbooks for parent-teacher conferences, traded my dreams for his. Every soccer practice in Roswell, I was there. Folding chair on the sideline, sun beating down on my face, cheering until my throat was raw. Every Little League game in Alpharetta, I was there. Keeping score, bringing orange slices, wiping his tears when he struck out. When other moms complained about their schedules, I smiled and said I wouldn't have it any other way. I was lying, but I didn't know it yet. Steven was good at everything. Straight A's, varsity baseball, president of his senior class. Teachers loved him, coaches loved him. I loved him so much, it physically hurt sometimes. Robert would ruffle his hair and say, "That's my boy," and I'd feel this swell of pride mixed with something else I couldn't name. Erasure, maybe. Like I was just the backdrop to their story. We paid for everything. His fraternity dues at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs, right? $3,000 a semester. So he could network and party and build the life we never had. His first apartment deposit in Buckhead, the fancy part of Atlanta where young professionals pretended they'd already made it. $2,500 we didn't have, pulled from our savings account while I kept working double shifts at the dental office. I remember standing in that apartment, helping him unpack boxes, and he barely looked at me. He was texting, laughing at something on his phone. I asked if he needed help assembling the bookshelf. He said, "Nah, Mom, I got it." And I knew he wanted me to leave. I drove home in silence, Robert asking if I was okay, and I said yes, because that's what I always said. Then he met Ashley. God, Ashley. A real estate agent from a wealthy family in Marietta. Her parents had a country club membership, a lake house at Lake Lanier, cars that cost more than our house. The first time Stephen brought her to Sunday dinner at our place, she looked around our modest living room like she was visiting a museum exhibit on how poor people lived. She smiled. She said the right things, but I saw it in her eyes. We weren't good enough. The wedding was at the Marietta Country Club. $60,000, and her parents paid for every cent of it. We offered to help. Ashley's mother, Karen, said, "Oh, don't worry, we've got it covered," with this little laugh that made me feel about 2 inches tall. At the reception, I sat at a table in the back while Ashley's family held court at the front. Stephen's best man made a toast about how Ashley elevated him, made him better, introduced him to the finer things in life. I clapped until my hands hurt. After that, everything changed. Suddenly, our Sunday dinners at Cracker Barrel, the tradition we'd had for 20 years, weren't convenient anymore. Stephen would text an hour before, "Sorry, Mom, Ashley's got a thing," or "We're doing brunch with her parents," or "The kids are tired." Always an excuse. Always something more important. Thanksgiving became Ashley's family's event. Their mansion in Marietta, catered food, everyone dressed like they were going to a photo shoot. We were invited, technically, but it was clear we were the charity cases. Karen would introduce us to her friends as Stephen's parents, with this tone that made it sound like an apology. We stopped going after the second year. I told Stephen we had our own plans. He said, "Cool, see you at Christmas," and I realized he was relieved. Christmas wasn't much better. We'd drive to their house in Brookhaven, this massive 3-story McMansion with a stone facade that screamed we made it. The grandkids, Emma and Noah, barely knew us. They called me Sandra sometimes instead of Grandma because that's what Ashley called me. I'd bring homemade peach cobbler, my grandmother's recipe, the one Stephen used to beg for as a kid. It would sit untouched on the counter while everyone ate tiramisu from some expensive bakery in Buckhead. I'd watch Stephen playing with Emma and Noah, tickling them, making them laugh, and I'd remember doing the same thing with him. I'd remember the weight of him as a toddler, falling asleep on my chest, the smell of his baby shampoo, the way he used to grab my hand crossing the street, and I'd look at this man who barely made eye contact with me anymore and wonder where my son went. Robert would squeeze my hand in the car on the way home. He'd say, "They're just busy, Sandy, they'll come around." But I knew better. I could feel it. The way you feel a storm coming. I wasn't losing my son. I'd already lost him. I just hadn't accepted it yet. I started hosting 4th of July barbecues by myself. Well, with Robert and my sister Karen and a few neighbors. I'd set up the grill, make potato salad, hang American flags from the porch. I'd text Stephen, "We're doing the 4th at our place, hot dogs on the grill, just like when you were little." He'd respond with a thumbs up emoji. Never showed up. I'd stand in our backyard, watching fireworks over Roswell, and feel so angry I couldn't breathe. But I'd smile anyway because that's what good mothers do. They smile through it. I'd call him every Sunday morning. For months. 9, 10, 11 weeks in a row. "Hey honey, just checking in. Wanted to hear your voice. Hope the kids are good." Most of the time, voicemail. When he did pick up, he sounded distracted. "Yeah, Mom. Everything's fine. Kinda busy. Can I call you back?" He never called back. I sent birthday gifts to Emma and Noah. Carefully chosen toys, books, craft sets. I'd wrap them myself, write little notes. "Love, Grandma Sandra." 2 packages came back, marked "Return to Sender." Ashley had sent them back without opening them. When I asked Stephen about it, he said, "Oh, we're trying to minimize clutter. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was. I knew it felt like being erased. I showed up to Noah's t-ball game in May. I'd seen Ashley post about it on Instagram. I drove 40 minutes to the field in Brookhaven. Found a spot in the bleachers, waved at Stephen. He looked shocked, almost angry. Ashley came over, all fake sweetness, and said, "Oh, Sandra, you didn't have to come. We already have grandparent seats reserved for my parents." I left at the 3rd inning, cried the whole way home. Robert's health scare happened in July. He woke up with chest pains, couldn't catch his breath. I drove him to Northside Hospital at 5 a.m., hands shaking on the wheel. They admitted him, ran tests, hooked him up to monitors. Turned out to be heart palpitations, nothing life-threatening. But we didn't know that for 6 terrifying hours. I left 3 voicemails for Stephen. Mom voice, the one that's trying not to panic but can't quite hide it. Dad's in the ER. Can you call me? Can you come? He texted back 8 hours later. Sorry, just saw this. Everything okay? I stared at that text, sitting in a hospital chair, Robert sleeping with an IV in his arm. And something inside me just broke. I didn't respond. What was the point? My therapist, Dr. Rebecca Lawson, had an office in Sandy Springs. I started seeing her in August. I'd sit on her beige couch, boxes of tissues on the table, and I'd try to explain how it felt to be invisible to your own child. She'd nod, take notes, and finally she said something that changed everything. Sandra, you taught him that you'd always be there no matter how he treated you. Now you need to teach him what your absence feels like. I stopped calling first, stopped texting, stopped showing up uninvited. It felt like cutting off my own arm, but I did it. And you know what happened? Nothing. Stephen didn't notice, or if he did, he didn't care. 3 months of silence, not a word. That's when I knew for sure. I wasn't his mother anymore. I was just someone he used to need. Then Aunt Dorothy died, September 12, 2024. She was 89, lived alone in Savannah her whole life, never married, no kids. I'd visited her maybe twice a year, sent Christmas cards, called on her birthday. We weren't close, but we were family in the way distant relatives are. When the attorney called and said I needed to come to Savannah for the will reading, I figured maybe she'd left me some jewelry or a few $1,000s. Robert and I drove down, 3 hours through Georgia highways, past peach stands and boiled peanut shacks. The lawyer's office was on Broughton Street, one of those old buildings with hardwood floors and tall windows. We sat in leather chairs that smelled like old money. The attorney, a man in his 60s with kind eyes, opened the folder and started reading. To my niece, Sandra Mitchell, I leave the entirety of my estate. And then he listed it. 3 rental properties in Savannah, 2 in Charleston, South Carolina, a stock portfolio, savings accounts, bonds, all of it, totaling $4.2 million. I couldn't breathe. Robert grabbed my hand so hard it hurt. The attorney smiled and said, "Your aunt was a silent real estate investor. She lived modestly, but she was very, very smart with money. She left a note for you." He handed me an envelope, my name written in Aunt Dorothy's shaky handwriting. I opened it right there, tears already starting. It said, "Sandra, you spent your whole life making yourself small so others could be big. Now it's your turn. Live for yourself. Don't let them take this from you. Love, Aunt Dorothy." I sobbed in that office. Big, ugly, gasping sobs. Robert held me while I cried 35 years of exhaustion into his shoulder. The attorney politely looked away. We drove home in stunned silence. I kept thinking, this is it. This is my chance. I can do something for myself. I can finally live. The first thing I did was call a financial advisor, then an estate attorney. I wanted to be smart about this, protect it, make sure it couldn't be touched or manipulated or stolen. I sold 3 of the rental properties within a month, netted $850,000 in cash, paid off our mortgage, our car loans, every credit card. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone anything. Then I bought the Porsche, a Taycan Turbo S, frozen blue metallic. It cost $185,000, and I paid cash. The salesman at the dealership in Alpharetta kept asking if I wanted to finance it, and I said no, cash, and I watched his eyes go wide. When I drove it off the lot, I felt like I was flying. I took myself shopping. Not to TJ Maxx or Marshall's where I'd spent decades hunting clearance racks, to Nordstrom at Phipps Plaza. I bought a cream blazer that cost $400, a silk blouse, real leather shoes. I stood in the dressing room mirror and barely recognized myself. I got my hair done at a Buckhead salon where they serve champagne. The stylist said, "Honey, let's embrace this silver," and she cut it into a modern bob with highlights that caught the light. I walked out feeling like a different person. Or maybe like the person I was always supposed to be. Robert and I moved out of our ranch house in Roswell. We bought a luxury condo in Midtown Atlanta, 21st floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline. Every morning, I'd stand at those windows with my coffee and watch the sun rise over the city, and I'd think, this is mine. I earned this, not through marriage or inheritance or luck, through surviving. Robert retired early. We booked a Mediterranean cruise for December. 15 days, 7 countries. I bought new luggage, new clothes, new everything. I felt like I was preparing for a life I'd only ever dreamed about. On October 12th, 2024, I posted on Instagram for the first time in years. I'm not a social media person. My account had maybe 200 followers, mostly old coworkers and church friends. But that day, I wanted to share it. I wanted to say, look, I'm still here, I'm still alive, I matter. The photo was simple. Me in designer sunglasses, leaning against the Porsche Atlanta skyline behind me. I'm not gonna lie, I looked good. Confident. Free. The caption said, "Life begins when you stop waiting for permission to live it." 62 and just getting started. And I added a blue heart emoji because the car was blue and I felt ridiculously happy. I didn't post it for Steven. I posted it for me. But of course, he saw it. Within an hour, it had 200 likes, then 400, then 800. Old friends commenting, "You go, girl, and living your best life, and I'm so proud of you." My sister Karen called, laughing and crying at the same time. She said, "Sandra, you're glowing." But I knew. I knew the moment Steven saw that post, everything would change, because money talks. And a $200,000 car screams. 3 days later, October 15th, my phone rang at 7:43 p.m. Robert and I were watching Wheel of Fortune, his favorite show. I glanced at the screen. Steven's name, my heart stopped. 6 months of silence. And now he calls. I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Hello? Mom." His voice was careful, measured, like he was negotiating a business deal. "It's been too long. We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow at 2. Can you come to our place in Brookhaven?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask where he'd been when Robert was in the hospital, when I sat alone on my birthday, when I needed him and he was nowhere. But I didn't. I stayed calm. "What's this about, Steven?" "We'll explain tomorrow," he said. "It's important. Family stuff." And then, in the background, I heard Ashley's voice, sharp and clear. "Ask her about the money." My blood went cold. So that's what this was. They'd seen the Porsche. They'd done the math. Suddenly, after 6 months of treating me like I didn't exist, I was worth their time. I thought about saying no. I thought about hanging up. But Dr. Lawson's voice echoed in my head. "Sometimes you have to face the hurt to heal from it." "Okay," I said. "I'll be there at 2. And I hung up before he could say anything else. Robert looked at me. They saw the car. I nodded. He clenched his jaw, and I could see the anger in his eyes. The same anger I felt but had gotten so good at swallowing. "You don't have to go," he said. "I do," I told him. "I really do." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, running through every possible conversation. I knew what they wanted. Money. A loan, probably. Maybe for the house, maybe for the kids' school, maybe just because they felt entitled to it. And the worst part was, a tiny piece of me, that desperate mother piece, Wanted to say yes. Wanted to buy my way back into Stephen's life. But at 2 a.m., I got out of bed, opened my laptop, and emailed my estate attorney, Patricia Alvarez. Subject line: Need trust documentation. By 9 a.m. I wasn't going into that house defenseless. Not this time. The next morning, October 16th, I dressed like I was going to war. Cream blazer from Talbot's. Pearl earrings Robert gave me for our 30th anniversary. Hair perfect, makeup understated. The kind of armor that looks effortless but takes an hour to build. Robert offered to come with me. I told him no. This was mine to handle. The drive from Midtown to Brookhaven took 25 minutes through Atlanta traffic. NPR was playing on the radio. Something about politics, but I didn't hear a word. I drove past the Kroger where I'd cried in the parking lot after my birthday. Past the Starbucks where I used to meet Stephen for coffee before he got too busy. Every mile felt like peeling back scar tissue. Their house came into view, and I felt my chest tighten. 3 stories, stone facade, circular driveway, Ashley's white Range Rover parked out front, Stephen's leased BMW next to it. I pulled the Porsche right up front, let it sit there like a middle finger. Let them see it. Let them know I didn't need them anymore. Ashley opened the door. Her eyes went straight to the car, not to me. "Sandra," she said, fake smile plastered on. "Wow, nice car. No hug, no warmth, just assessment." Inside, the house smelled like Starbucks and expensive candles, the kind that cost $60 and smell like nothing. The living room was immaculate. Leather sectional, 75-inch TV showing ESPN on mute. Photos on the walls of Ashley's family skiing in Aspen. Not a single picture of me. Not one. Stephen sat in an armchair like a CEO about to run a board meeting. Ashley perched on the couch, tablet in hand, ready to take notes or pull up spreadsheets or whatever the hell she'd planned. The coffee table had papers on it. Financial documents, calculators, highlighted sections. This wasn't a family meeting. This was an ambush. "Mom," Stephen said, "thanks for coming. We know it's been a while." "A while?" I sat down, back straight, purse in my lap, and looked him dead in the eye. 6 months, Stephen. But who's counting? He cleared his throat. Uncomfortable. "Right. Well, we wanted to talk to you about something important." Ashley jumped in, her voice taking on that fake vulnerability she probably learned in some sales seminar. "Sandra, we've hit some rough patches financially. The housing market's been brutal. My commissions are down 60%. Stephen nodded along like they'd rehearsed this. "And my promotion got delayed at work. The twins' private school tuition at Holy Innocents, it's $45,000 a year. We're 2 months behind." I stared at him. 2 months behind on private school tuition, but Ashley's still driving a Range Rover. Priorities, I guess. Ashley's voice cracked right on cue. "We might lose the house, Sandra. We're looking at foreclosure. The bank's already sent notices." Stephen slid a stack of papers across the coffee table. "We need a loan. $300,000. Just to get us through until things turn around." I looked down at the papers. Loan documents. Already filled out. My name already typed in at the top. Sandra Mitchell, borrower. Signature line blank. Waiting for me to sign my name and hand over $350,000. They'd prepared this before I even walked in the door. Ashley leaned forward. "We saw that Aunt Dorothy left you money. You've always been so generous, Sandra. We knew you'd help family." And there it was. The real reason for the call. They'd seen the Porsche, done the math, figured out I had money, and decided I owed them some. Stephen tried to look earnest. "Mom, we wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate. But Emma and Noah, they're your grandkids. We can't let them suffer because of our situation." Using the kids. Of course. The ultimate guilt trip. I sat there, holding those papers, and I felt something shift inside me. Clarity, maybe. Or just exhaustion. I looked at Stephen, really looked at him, and I didn't see my son anymore. I saw a stranger. A stranger who wanted something from me. Family, I repeated slowly, like I was testing the word. Stephen jumped on it. Of course, Mom. Blood is thicker than water, right? I set the papers down. Where were you on March 15th? Silence. Stephen blinked. What? My birthday, I said, keeping my voice steady. The one you RSVP'd maybe to. The one I sat alone for at the Cheesecake Factory. Where were you? Ashley's eyes darted to Stephen. He shifted in his chair. Mom, it was Emma's friend's birthday party. We couldn't. I pulled out my phone, opened Instagram, pulled up the screenshot I'd saved. I turned it toward them. Ashley's story from that night. Truist Park. Braves game. The timestamp read, 6:47 p.m. Emma and Noah holding foam fingers, faces painted, laughing. 40 minutes away, I said quietly. You were 40 minutes away from my birthday dinner. You chose a baseball game. Stephen opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I kept going, and I could hear my voice getting harder, sharper. When Robert was in the ER with chest pains in July, did either of you visit? Stephen tried to recover. We didn't know it was serious. I left 3 voicemails, I said. 3. You texted me 8 hours later asking if everything was okay. The room went cold. I could see Ashley calculating, trying to figure out how to spin this. Stephen leaned forward. Mom, we're talking about our future here, the kids' future. You can't seriously be holding grudges when... Grudges? I stood up, walked to the window. Outside, their perfectly manicured lawn, basketball hoop in the driveway, the American dream they were about to lose. I turned back. This isn't about grudges, Stephen. It's about respect. And you haven't shown me any in years. Ashley stood up too, voice rising. That's not fair. We've been busy, we've had our own lives. And I haven't? I shot back. I worked double shifts so you could play travel baseball, Stephen. I missed my own father's funeral to help you move into your dorm. I put my nursing degree on hold, permanently, so you could have everything you wanted. And what did I get in return? Empty chairs at my birthday dinner. Stephen's face was red now. That was your choice, Mom. Nobody forced you. You're right, I said, voice shaking. It was my choice. And this is my choice too. I walked back to the coffee table, picked up the loan documents, and set them back down in front of him. You'll get your answer tomorrow. Stephen stood up. Mom, we need to know now. The bank. 24 hours, I said, picking up my purse. You made me wait 6 months to matter again. You can wait 24 hours. Ashley's composure finally cracked. This is ridiculous, Sandra. We're your family. We're asking for help. And you're playing games. I stopped at the door, turned to look at both of them. Games? No, Ashley. What's ridiculous is thinking a Porsche was the price of admission back into my life. What's ridiculous is ignoring me for half a year and then calling a family meeting the second you think I have money. What's ridiculous is using my grandchildren as emotional blackmail. I walked out. The door closed softly behind me. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, and I realized I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I felt calm, clear, like I'd finally said the things I should have said years ago. I drove home, and Robert was waiting. He took one look at my face and said, "How bad?" I smiled. Worse than I thought. Better than I feared. He held me, and I let myself feel it. Not sadness, not regret, just resolution. Tomorrow, they'd get their answer, and it wouldn't be the one they wanted. The next day, October 17th, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Today was the day I chose myself. Robert made coffee, kissed my forehead, and said, "I'm coming with you this time." I didn't argue. I needed him there. We arrived at Stephen's house at exactly 2 p.m. I parked the Porsche in the same spot, killed the engine, and grabbed my briefcase from the back seat. Robert squeezed my hand. Ready? I nodded. More than ready. Stephen opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept. Good. Ashley was already in the living room, makeup heavier than usual, trying to hide the cracks. They sat in the same positions as yesterday. I didn't sit. I stayed standing, briefcase in hand. Let's get started, I said. Dad cleared his throat, trying to take control. Your brother's situation hasn't improved. We'd like to finalize the loan today. Before we do that, I said, opening my briefcase. There's something you should see. Stephen snorted. Let me guess. More photos of your car? I smiled, calm and controlled. Not quite. I pulled out a thick envelope and laid it on the coffee table. The bold header read, The Dorothy Mitchell Foundation for Women's Independence. $3.8 million endowment. What's this? Ashley asked, grabbing the document, her brow furrowing. A surprise, I said softly. Since we're talking about family investments, I wanted to share mine. Stephen scanned the page, and I watched his face go from confusion to disbelief to rage. $3.8 million? Every cent, I said. Legally protected. Dedicated to funding education and business grants for women over 50 inches, digital media, small business, and continuing education. Logan laughed, but it sounded hollow. You're kidding! You put $3.8 million into strangers? Not strangers, I corrected. Women like me. Women who were invisible in their own homes. Women who gave up everything and got nothing back. Ashley's hand was trembling. Lily, that's unwise. You could have helped your family instead of throwing it away on people you don't even know. I clicked my phone, setting it on the table. The recording app was running, red light blinking. Just for transparency, I said. I'm recording this conversation, so we're all clear about who asked for what. Stephen stiffened. That's unnecessary, Mom. It's essential, I said evenly. You've made your expectations very clear. Now let me make mine. I leaned forward slightly. You missed my high school graduation because you were at a sales conference. You skipped my college showcase because Logan had a baseball game. You ignored my wedding. Every single milestone in my life, I looked for you. And every single time, you chose something else. So no, this money isn't for you. It's for the women whose families can't see them either. Ashley's voice rose. We only did what we thought was best for everyone. No, I said quietly. You did what was convenient for you. Stephen slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. You think you're better than us because you got lucky with an inheritance? Lucky? I repeated, almost laughing. You think working 3 jobs to put you through college was luck? You think every door I had slammed in my face was luck? You think surviving 35 years of being invisible was luck? No, Stephen. What I am is done. The room went silent. Even the air felt heavy. I closed the folder, tucked it neatly back into my briefcase, and straightened my blazer. You wanted to talk about family. Here's my definition. Family shows up. Family remembers birthdays. Family visits hospitals. Family doesn't disappear for 6 months and reappear when they need money. And you failed on every count. Robert stood beside me, his presence solid and supportive. Stephen tried one last card, his voice low and threatening. Blood is thicker than water, Mom. You can't just abandon your own son. I looked him in the eye. Then you should have thought about that before you diluted it. I walked toward the door, Robert right behind me. Stephen jumped up. You can't just walk out. Mom, we need that money. I turned slightly, just enough to see his face. I already walked out, Stephen. 2 years ago, when you chose a baseball game over my birthday. This is just me making it official. Ashley screamed from the couch. You're going to regret this, Sandra. You're destroying this family. I paused, hand on the doorknob. No, Ashley. You destroyed it the moment you decided I was only valuable when I had something to give. The door clicked shut behind us. Outside, I could hear them arguing through the walls, voices rising into chaos. In the car, my phone buzzed. An email from my foundation attorney. Foundation launch approved. Press release scheduled for tomorrow morning. I showed it to Robert. He smiled. Perfect timing. The next day, October 18th, the news spread like wildfire. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution ran a feature on the front page of the business section. The headline read, 6 two-year-old dental hygienist turned, philanthropist launches $3, 8M Women's Foundation. The photo showed me standing outside the foundation's first office in Decatur, confident, composed, untouchable. The subheading said, after decades of putting others first, Sandra Mitchell is helping women reclaim their independence. By noon, the story had been picked up by Good Morning America. My phone was ringing off the hook. Local news wanted interviews. Women from across the country were emailing the foundation, sharing their stories, asking for applications. My inbox was flooded. 12,000 emails in the first 24 hours. The website crashed twice from traffic, but there was also backlash. Stephen posted a rant on Facebook. It's been deleted now, but I saw it. Screenshots live forever. He wrote, some people get money and forget where they came from. Family should come first, but I guess some people value strangers over their own blood. It got 47 comments, most of them from people who didn't know the full story, saying things like, praying for you and family is everything. Ashley posted on Instagram a photo of Emma and Noah looking sad, with the caption, family should come first, always. Heart emoji. Broken heart emoji. It was manipulative and gross, and I refused to engage. But then the tide started turning. Women started commenting on Stephen's post, sharing their own stories. One woman wrote, my mother gave me everything, and I treated her like dirt. I regret it every day. Don't blame her for choosing herself. Another said, sounds like you only cared when you needed money. Maybe look in the mirror. The church friends in Brookhaven started gossiping, sure, but the internet was on my side, and for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Really, truly seen. On November 1st, 2024, I sat down for an interview with Deborah Roberts on 20/20. They filmed at my condo in Midtown, Atlanta glittering in the windows behind me. Deborah was kind, professional, but she didn't pull punches. Sandra, your son says you abandoned your family for money. What do you say to that? I looked directly into the camera. I didn't abandon anyone. I stopped allowing myself to be used. There's a difference. Deborah leaned forward. Can you explain? I took a deep breath. For 35 years, I gave everything I had to my son. My time, my money, my dreams. I worked double shifts so he could play sports. I missed my own father's funeral to help him move. I put my nursing career on hold forever. And when I needed him, when I was sitting alone on my birthday, when my husband was in the hospital, he was nowhere. So no, I didn't abandon him. He abandoned me a long time ago. I just finally stopped pretending it didn't hurt. Deborah showed the receipts. The text messages I'd sent over 6 months, all unanswered. The Instagram screenshot of the Braves game during my birthday, the hospital voicemails, the returned birthday gifts for my grandchildren. She showed all of it. And then she asked the question that broke me. What do you want people to understand, Sandra? I felt tears welling up, but I didn't let them fall. I want people to understand that motherhood doesn't mean martyrdom. You can love your child with every fiber of your being and still choose yourself. You can give someone everything and still have boundaries. And you don't owe anyone access to your peace just because you share DNA. The episode aired on November 3rd. Within hours, #Team Sandra was trending on Twitter. Women across America were sharing their own stories of being taken for granted by their children, their spouses, their families. The foundation's website crashed again. Applications flooded in. 15,000 inches, 48 hours. A publisher reached out. Your story needs to be a book, they said. My Instagram went from 200 followers to 47,000 overnight. Messages poured in from women thanking me, sharing their pain, telling me I gave them permission to choose themselves. I read every single one and cried. But Stephen wasn't done. On November 5th, I arrived at the Foundation's office in Decatur, and there was a scene. Stephen, Ashley, and Ashley's mother Karen were outside, shouting. Stephen was red-faced, screaming at anyone who'd listen. "She's destroying our family's reputation! She's making us look like monsters!" My assistant Tanya met me at the door, face pale. "Should I call the police?" I looked past her at Stephen, who was now pacing, hands in his hair. Ashley was crying, real or fake. I couldn't tell anymore. Karen was on her phone, probably calling her country club friends to complain. "No," I said calmly. "Let them finish." I walked toward the entrance. Stephen saw me and lunged forward. Security stepped between us, but he was shouting, "Mom, please, you're ruining us. Everyone knows now. Everyone's talking about us." I stopped, turned to face him fully. "You ruined yourself, Stephen. I just stopped covering for you," Ashley screamed from behind him. "You're going to regret this. You're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see us happy." I didn't flinch. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "If you were happy, you wouldn't need my money." Then I walked inside. Security escorted them off the property. Through the glass doors, I watched them argue with each other, blaming, pointing fingers. When they finally drove away, my entire team stood up and applauded. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. The consequences came fast after that. By mid-November, their house was in foreclosure. I saw the listing on Zillow. $1.2 million, bank-owned. The photos showed their furniture still inside, like they'd abandoned ship. They moved into Ashley's parents' basement in Marietta. Stephen updated his LinkedIn, seeking new opportunities. Corporate speak for I got fired. The private school sent a final notice. Emma and Noah were transferred to public school. Ashley's real estate license lapsed. She was too depressed to renew it, according to someone who knew someone. Stephen took a job at a Verizon store in Kennesaw, making $18 an hour. The BMW got repossessed. Ashley drove a 2015 Honda Civic now. Everything they'd built on credit and appearances crumbled. And I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just emptiness where my son used to be. In January, a letter came. Emma's handwriting, clearly coached. "Dear Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you don't love us anymore. Please help us. We're scared." My hands shook reading it. I wrote back immediately. "Sweet Emma, I love you with all my heart. When you're older, you'll understand that loving yourself doesn't mean not loving others. It just means not setting yourself on fire to keep someone else warm." I set up education trusts for both kids. $100,000 each, accessible when they turn 25. Not a penny for Stephen and Ashley. My attorney made sure it was airtight. February came, and with it, recognition I never asked for. The Georgia Women's Leadership Award. The ceremony was at the Fox Theater in Atlanta. 1,200 people in attendance. I wore a navy gown, hair done, feeling like an imposter. Governor Brian Kemp presented the award. The applause was deafening. My speech was short. For 35 years, I believed my worth was in how much I could give. Today, I know my worth is in who I am, not what I provide. The audience stood. Tissues came out. Strangers hugged me afterward. But the moment that mattered most was when a young woman, maybe 28, approached with tears streaming down her face. "Miss Mitchell," she said, "your foundation approved my grant. I'm opening a bakery in Marietta. Because of you, I get to be my own boss for the first time in my life." I hugged her tight, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt it. Purpose. Real, tangible purpose. 1 year later, October 2025, I stood in the Foundation's new headquarters in Sandy Springs, 12,000 square feet, bright and modern. The walls were covered in photos of grant recipients, bakery owners, nurses, real estate investors, artists, writers. 127 women helped so far. Businesses launched, degrees completed, lives transformed. I walked through those halls every day, touching the photos, reading their stories, and I felt full in a way I never did as a mother. Then, one afternoon, there was a knock on my office door. I looked up from my desk. Stephen stood there. No Ashley, no swagger. He looked smaller somehow, like life had beaten him down to size. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes were tired. "Mom," he said quietly, "can we talk? Just us?" I studied him for a long moment. No cameras, no recording, no agenda. He shook his head. I wanted to apologize. Really apologize. We sat in my office. Atlanta skyline spread out behind us. He stared at his hands. "I treated you like an ATM. I see that now." "Why now?" I asked, voice flat. "Because I'm standing in a Verizon store selling phone plans to people who used to be my clients, and I realized something. You worked retail for years to give me opportunities I wasted. You sacrificed, and I didn't even notice." Silence hung between us. He looked up, eyes red. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect money. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry. And I'm trying to teach Emma and Noah that people aren't valuable because of what they have. They're valuable because of who they are. That's all I ever wanted you to understand," I said, my voice cracking despite myself. "Can I see you sometimes?" he asked. "Not at the house. Maybe coffee? Once a month?" I considered it. Every fiber of my being wanted to say yes, to fix it, to go back. But I'd learned something in the past year. Some bridges take time to rebuild. And that's okay. "One Sunday a month," I said finally. "At Cracker Barrel, our old table." His face broke into a smile, tears falling. "I'd like that, Mom. I really would." He left, and I sat alone in my office, staring out at the city. Robert called. "How'd it go?" "Baby steps," I said. "Very baby steps." December came. Robert and I hosted Christmas at our condo. Not Stephen, he wasn't ready yet. But my sister Karen, my foundation team, women I'd helped, friends who'd stood by me. The table overflowed with food and laughter and chosen family. My phone buzzed during dessert. A photo from Stephen, Emma, and Noah holding a sign, "We love you, Grandma." I smiled but didn't respond. Some things couldn't be rushed. March 15th, 2026, my 64th birthday. This time, I was at a restaurant in Buckhead, not alone. Robert beside me, my sister across the table, my best friend Diane, foundation board members. The waiter brought out a cake with candles blazing. Everyone sang. My phone buzzed. "Happy birthday, Mom. I'm proud of you. Stephen." I read it, set the phone face down, and blew out the candles. "Everything okay?" Robert asked. "Everything," I said, looking around the table at faces that chose to be there, "is exactly as it should be." If you've ever been taken for granted by your own children, this story is for you. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from: Texas, New York, Florida, California. Because your story might be the next one someone needs to hear. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next. Because your worth isn't measured by how much you give. It's measured by how much you give yourself permission to live. And I'm finally living.